Hello, good day, doctor. Today I, Seshadri Kunalan, and my group mates, Munish, son of Nachiappa, Yuvanish, son of Jiva, Kesavartini, daughter of Shanmugam, Ravin, son of Ramesh, and Tanish, son of Subramanian, will be presenting a topic on climate change and its effects on tourism in Cameron Highlands. Climate change is a very important issue that needs to be addressed before it is too late. The conditions of climate change are already as bad as it is, and it will continue to get worse the longer we avoid it. So, what is climate change? Climate change, defined by the UN, is long-term changes in temperature and weather patterns. Now, these changes are normally natural. However, since the 1800s, climate change is driven mainly by human activities. The combustion of fossil fuels such as coal, oil, and gas produces greenhouse gas emissions that acts as a blanket around the Earth. And it traps the sun's heat and it raises our Earth's temperature. Carbon dioxide and methane are the most common greenhouse gas. I know that climate change has affected many industries, but the tourism industry has taken a big hit. Tourism is a very important industry to a country's economy, especially in a country like Malaysia, where we have beautiful beaches, mountains, cities that attract tourists every single year. The tourism industry itself contributed 14.1% to Malaysia's GDP back in 2020, and it has contributed 12.8% to Malaysia's GDP in 2021. Now, one of the reasons of this drop is because of the effects of climate change in Malaysia.
Hello all, I'm Munish here with the ID 2001267. I'll be explaining a few parts of the slides here. First of them is the problem statement. We wanted to get to know the impact and the causes of climate change and prove on how the climate change actually affects the entire tourism industry in our country, Malaysia, especially in Cameron Highlands, Pahang. This entire reason we did this project is because we wanted to know the effects of climate change to one of the very well-known tourist destinations in Malaysia, which is also known as Cameron Highlands. Next up, let's talk about the research questions. These research questions became the pushing stone for us to actually start and end this project well. The research questions for this entire SI project is first, how severe is the negative impact of climate change on tourism in Malaysia? The second research question that we put up in this project is what efforts can be taken to actually reduce the impact of climate change on the tourism in Malaysia. Both of these research questions are very important in the sense to find and give a solution to the increasing climate change and its effect to our tourist spots in Malaysia, especially in Cameron Highlands as the engineering students of UTP. Next up, we also put ourselves a few objectives on why we choose this project, and we wanted to ensure that by the end of this project, we wanted to achieve all these objectives, and yes, indeed, in the end of this project, we did achieve all the objectives that we aimed for. In that sense, first of all, we wanted to study and understand the impact of climate change on the tourism of a country. We understood that the impact of the climate change brings towards the tourism of a country, especially in tourist attractions like Cameron Highlands. Secondly, we also wanted to study the ways to improve the tourism of a country and the climate change through ecotourism and prevent climate change from affecting the tourism industry. By analyzing the interviews done with the sellers and the tourists in the Cameron Highlands and few internet documents as well, we get to know the ways to improve the tourism in the country without causing the climate change to happen in Malaysia. Now, as the next part of these slides, let's talk about the hypothesis of our scientific inquiry project, and it is climate change can negatively impact the tourism and lead to various negative impacts in Malaysia, and climate changes could lead to negative perception of travelling and destinations value for money. We actually did various surveys, interviews and online readings to prove our hypothesis throughout the entire project, and in the conclusion, it will be explained whether we managed to prove them or not. So that's all from me now. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Evidence suggests that the global climate will shift throughout the 21st century and beyond. Tourism, like algae culture and transportation, depends on good weather. If the tourism sector is to thrive, all main stakeholders must adapt to climate change. Tourism can help combat climate change, if its expertise and resources are fully utilized. COVID-19 revealed this relationship when vacation plans were cancelled. The global downturn in tourism has harmed several third world countries. Families struggled to find adequate food. Poaching and logging increased in several locations. As the tourism industry recovers, it's clear that the climate change will affect its future. This study aims to identify a clear and consistent message and strategy that can be adopted across a full sector and is aligned with the bigger scientific base and the need to act immediately. Second, detail the channels and actions that will help tourism transform and reach net zero as soon as possible. Delegates from the tourism industry should make a public declaration supporting a stronger response to the climate emergency. For our research, we have chosen interview to inquire information for our study. Through the interview, which was done with the target respondent using a structured interview format, the reasons for conducting interviews to collect data is that they provide a clear and current perspective on our research as a main source. Before the interview began, the respondent was told of the ethical issues, including that the interview was for education purpose only and the interview will be recorded. Verbal consent was also obtained before beginning.
Hello, my name is Ravin Ramesh and now I'll be presenting the literature review part of our project. First of all, we have the definition of climate change. Climate change is the long-term change in temperature and weather patterns. The changes could be natural where the variations are such as in the solar cycle. The main causes of climate change is the use of fossil fuels such as coal, oil and gas by humans. The average global land and ocean temperature has increased by 0.85 degrees Celsius between 1980 and 2012, and between 2011 and 2020, the global average surface temperature rose by 1.0 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial period of 1950s to 1900s. Next is tourism in Malaysia. Malaysia is a wonderful tourist spot because it has many beautiful and historical places and also mouth-watering cuisines. In 2010, 24.6 million tourists visited Malaysia, contributing in around 56.5 billion in tourism receipts. Tourism has also provided job opportunities to Malaysians. In 2009, it has contributed 12.3% of total GDP in Malaysia, with 1.16 million employment opportunities provided. Next, we'll talk about the impact of climate change to Malaysia. Our country is the fourth largest emitter of greenhouse gases amongst Asian countries. It contributes to 0.52% of the world's carbon emissions. Kota Kinabalu, Kuching, Malacca and Kuantan had a temperature spike of 26 degrees to 28.5 degrees, 25.5 degrees to 27.5 degrees, 26 to 28.5 degrees and 25 degrees to 28 degrees Celsius in 2016. Extreme weather has also been faced by Malaysia, which were dry spells, thunderstorms, high rainfall and strong winds throughout the past decade. Heavy rainfall has caused high flows in watersheds in many states in Malaysia and also causing the average sea level to rise at 3.67 mm per year or minus 0.15 mm per year. Following that, we have impact of climate change to tourism in Malaysia. The change in temperature and precipitation patterns will lead to a change in a variety of outdoor tourism and recreation activities. Some of the examples of these are changes in migrating bird populations may have an impact on bird watchers and wildlife enthusiasts' recreational options. Besides that, heavy rainfall has caused hill-type tourism spots such as Genting Highland and Cameron Highlands to be temporarily closed. And also, heavy rains and thunderstorms causes waters and recreational parks to be closed as well. And finally, we have the public perception of climate change in Malaysia. Malaysians, specifically 69.75%, are worried about climate change and only 12% of the populace said that they were unconcerned at all about the climate change happening in Malaysia. The data that was collected shows that Malaysia, or specifically Malaysians, are on the right track in tackling climate change. That's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, so next up is findings. In findings, we interviewed 3 different types of entrepreneurs that run different types of tourism related business in Cameron Highlands. We also interviewed a tourist that regularly visits Cameron Highlands. So first, the interview with the employee of Raju Hill Strawberry. According to the seller, climate change hasn't really affected his strawberry business, but climate change brings unpredictable weather and increasing of sudden landslides. The unpredictable weather in Cameron Highlands sometimes makes it harder for the farmers to plant strawberry, where sometimes it is way hot and sometimes it keeps raining suddenly. So, this disturbs the production rate of strawberry farming slightly. For landslides are one of the biggest problems that affects Cameron Highlands. Landslides also affects the tourism industry as they block the roads and also tourists. According to the seller, landslides can occur in any moment in Cameron Highlands because it is hard to predict.
Like how climate change is affecting tourism in like a negative way, as in like
it won't affect the tourism actually. It will affect the farmers or
farmers.
yeah. So for vegetables and like strawberries, all need sunlight to grow big and sweeter. So if keep on raining, strawberry won't grow so bigger and sweeter.
So
We need sunlight here. But this weather keep on like more than 1 week keep on like this. Yeah.
and last time it used to be like one season, one part of the year it will be like raining the whole time.
Secondly, the interview with corn businessman. According to the businessman, the trend of tourists in Cameron Highlands will not be fixed and will be changing according to the current state of country. During COVID period MCO, even a small number of tourists visited Cameron Highlands, but after Raya festival the number of tourists increased. From what the businessman told, climate change does not really affect the tourism, although the coldness in Cameron Highlands is lesser compared to last time, but the number of tourists that come to visit is still the same. Furthermore, climate change does not affect his corn business significantly, but suddenly climate change and unpredictable weather affects strawberry and some types of flower business. The main point the businessman said was climate change in Cameron Highlands after tourism is through disasters like landslides.
டெய்லி ஆள் இருக்கு டெய்லி டூரிஸ்ட் வந்துட்டு இருக்காங்க
எல்லா மாசமும் ஒரே மாதிரி தான் இருக்கு.
டெய்லி ஒரே மாதிரி தான் இருக்கு. ஆனால் வீக்கெண்ட் வந்து கொஞ்சம் கூடையா இருக்கும்.
வெதர்லாம் வந்து ஒரு மாதிரி திருவாரூர்னா கூட அது கணக்கு இல்லை.
வெதர் கதையே இல்லை.
ஆமாம், சரி ஆள் வந்துட்டு தான் இருக்கு.
Next is interview with a flower businessman. According to the businessman, climate change have affected some flowers like outdoor plants and flowers, but for the indoor plants are not affected much. Next, according to the businessman, climate change have affected tourism in a bad way, where the number of tourists visiting Cameron Highlands have decreased compared to the past. Unpredictable weather such as hot days and sudden heavy rains is said by the businessman, where it is the main reason why tourism is affected in Cameron Highlands.
Bila indoor plant, dia tahan resistant terhadap perubahan cuaca.
Mostly indoor plant lah.
Pasal indoor plant. Satu lagi pokok semua ni tak boleh banyak air lah. Itu kena penting lah.
Kalau in terms of pelancong bang, abang rasa pelancong macam daripada dulu dengan sekarang ada tak pelancong macam ramai lagi ke kurang lagi ke?
Oh sekarang kurang lah.
Dah kurang.
Tak macam dulu lah sekarang.
Macam dulu. Kenapa bang? Kenapa abang rasa macam?
Macam mungkin faktor cuaca.
Lastly, we interviewed a tourist at Cameron Highlands. This tourist here visits Cameron Highlands 2 to 3 times a year, but for the past 2 years, he's been visiting only once because of its coldness. According to the tourist, climate change plays a major role at Cameron Highlands, where the number of tourists visiting Cameron Highlands have decreased. He believes that the uniqueness of Cameron Highlands is fading away. He also believes that because of climate change, the prices of groceries at Cameron Highlands increased. In his opinion, the main cause of climate change at Cameron Highlands is caused by carbon dioxide emission, where it comes from multiple sources, gas from vehicles exhaust and factory deposits, for instance. Also, he mentioned that non-stop rains at Cameron Highlands also can result to landslides. Thank you.
So, what do you think is the main cause of climate change here, and how does it affect you from coming to this place personally?
I think the climate change is caused by greenhouse effect, which is caused by carbon dioxide emission, and then it affected me in, actually I reduced coming to Cameron because of landslides, because it jeopardized my safety, and then unpredictable rainy season, it causes my plan not go with the flow because of unpredictable rains.
Hi. Next, I, Yuvanish Jiva, will be explaining about the discussion part of our research. In our research, we had already set a few objectives such as understanding the impact of climate change in one of the most popular tourist destinations in Malaysia, Cameron Highlands, and ways to overcome it. So in order to achieve our objectives, we conducted interview sessions involving 4 individuals, in which 3 of them were entrepreneurs who ran different types of businesses in Cameron Highlands, and the remaining 1 respondent was a tourist who visited Cameron Highlands quite regularly. We asked them various types of divergent questions in order to answer our research question and achieve our objectives. Analyzing our interviews from an entrepreneur point of view, we learned that there are specific types of crops that are affected more significantly and are more vulnerable to climate change compared to other types of crops. For example, Mr. Krishnan, the manager of Raju Strawberry Farm, claimed that his strawberry business is affected quite significantly by climate change because the strawberries are not as big and fresh as they used to be in the past years. He was able to even further support his argument by providing data that the temperature recorded in Cameron Highlands, the average temperature, has increased from 64.2 Fahrenheit degrees in 2008 to 72 Fahrenheit degrees in 2021. So the increase in temperature has caused strawberries to be smaller and less fresh compared to previous years. Similarly, our third respondent, Mr. Rizal, who owns a nursery, also claimed that his nursery business is affected by unpredictable weather that is due to climate change. He said that unpredictable weather makes it really hard for him to predict the perfect time to plant flowers and harvest them. Not only that, he stated that the maximum temperature recorded in Cameron Highlands has really increased in recent years, even touching 86 Fahrenheit degrees in 2021. This unusually hot weather makes flowers dry and lose their appearance. So unpredictable weather does not only mean hot weather, but on the other end of the spectrum, non-stop rain on the other hand makes it hard for flowers to bloom due to less sunlight. So this has caused Mr. Rizal's business to become worse, and he's now forced to import flowers from Thailand and Kelantan. However, in contrast to both our first and third respondent, our second respondent, Mr. Mani, who runs a corn business, claimed that his corn business has not been affected by unpredictable weather due to the type of crop he plants. Another common impact of climate change that has had negative impact in the businesses of our entrepreneur respondents is the increasing rate of landslides. Mr. Krishnan especially pointed out the fact that landslides have now become a big issue in Cameron Highlands as they have multiplied compared to 20 years ago. Landslides cause fear in the heart of tourists, causing the drastic decrease in the number of tourists, especially for a few weeks after the occurrence of a landslide. Lesser tourists means lesser customers, which cause a massive negative impact in the businesses of our entrepreneur respondents. In order to obtain the point of view of a tourist, we interviewed Mr. Ashwin, a tourist that has been visiting Cameron Highlands regularly for the past 15 years. He stated that the coolness he formerly felt in Cameron Highlands has reduced, and Cameron Highlands is not as frigid as it used to be. Not only that, fruits and vegetables that are planted in Cameron Highlands are not as big or fresh anymore because of the increase in temperature. He realizes that some retailers are taking advantage of this scenario by increasing the retail price of fresh fruits and vegetables in Cameron Highlands. However, Mr. Ashwin pointed out the fact that the main cause of climate change in Cameron Highlands might be the greenhouse effect, which is brought on by carbon dioxide emissions that can originate from various sources, such as factory deposits and gas from automobile exhaust. However, the undeniable fact is, this climate change is bringing many negative impacts, for instance, unpredictable rainy seasons. In his experience, he often hesitates to travel to Cameron Highlands due to uncertain wet seasons, and he is forced to change his entire schedule because of unforeseen downpour. Not only that, persistent rain can also occasionally cause landslides, which he considered to be a threat to his safety. He also recalls an incident where, once the landslide that happened in December last year forced him to cancel his entire trip to Cameron Highlands. Finally, when asked about the efforts that can be taken to overcome the impact of climate change, our second respondent, Mr. Rizal, pointed out the fact that irresponsible activities such as open burning should be avoided. Not only that, Mr. Ashwin said that greenhouse emissions, which he claims to be the main factor of climate change, can be avoided by simple efforts such as carpooling instead of using our own cars in order to reduce the carbon dioxide emission. Not only that, Mr. Krishnan also pointed out the fact that responsible parties should take actions such as improving drainage and building walls in order to overcome landslides, which are the main impact of climate change.
As we can see from our study, climate change indeed affects the tourism industry in a negative manner. The effects of climate change is felt by everyone under this Earth's atmosphere. World leaders need to be responsible over this issue because they have the power to make big changes. However, we as citizens too need to play our part in preventing climate change from getting worse by doing whatever is in our power. Drastic measures need to be taken in order to improve the situation of climate change worldwide. Dangerous times are ahead, and the future generation will suffer if we do nothing about this.